Cosme, University of the District of Columbia student, Tornia Anderson Morgan, and panel moderator, GW Sustainability Student Advisor, Ariel Kagan.
Hi, great. Welcome back from lunch. We hope you enjoyed the salads. So I'm here with 3 students who are all working on urban agriculture at their universities, which is very exciting. And these are actually the universities that are co-hosting today's event. So we're very happy to have everyone here. So this is going to be a dynamic dialogue. So we're going to talk to each other, and you guys are going to watch, and it's going to be great and exciting. So Kayla, let's start with you. Okay. Kayla gets the honor of working with me, and she helped organize today's event. So you also have another role on campus as the Grow Garden Manager. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Grow Garden is a completely student-run community garden, actually 2 blocks from where we are right now. And it's about half a city block, and we grow produce, and it actually all goes to Miriam's Kitchen, which is a soup kitchen a block from the garden. So it's all hyper-local here. And it's really we try to promote holistic food systems. So we have a lot of educational components and try to not focus on the productivity, although we did harvest about 300 pounds this summer, so that's awesome, but focusing more on, you know, we have a composting system, we're adding a rainwater harvesting system, we companion plant and grow, we're practicing organics. So how can we make it a sustainable food growing system for students to learn and get connected to their food in an urban environment? So that's the Grow Garden.
Awesome. So students come to GW from all around the country and the world, and they come to DC thinking they're going to, be up on the Hill or working in think tanks. How do you get students interested in agriculture when they're here in DC?
Well, I think it works in a little bit to our advantage that our dining system is alternative because we don't have like a central dining location. Students are really, as soon as they get on campus, they're forced to think about their food choices, and the more that they get exposed to the awesome DC farmers market culture here and community-supported agriculture and the various options that they have, they're interested in the local food movement, and also it's a growing popularity. I'm not gonna lie, it's a trendy movement, and that's good for me. We've been able to expand our volunteer base a lot over the past few years from, I think we used to have 100 on the listserv, and now we're up to like 350 people that follow us and hear about the Grow Garden. So it's definitely a growing movement, and we use that in our favor to just produce as much food as we can for Miriam's. And like I said, I think that being able to educate students on agriculture is important because they are making their own food choices right now, and a lot of students that are 18 coming from their homes have never had to think about that before. And so beginning them on how do you grow your food, where do you buy it, and where is it local? Are you cooking it yourself, and like where are you distributing it, and focusing on food equity through our partnership with Miriam's Kitchen. So really trying to be a holistic education system for people, especially because we don't have a food studies minor at GW or major academic program. Although the sustainability minor is great, it provides an extracurricular resource to learn academically. Like going into the Grow Garden, I didn't know anything about agriculture essentially, and now I know things about soil health that I never thought I knew a year and a half ago.
That's great. So for people who are here in DC, where can they go see the Grow Garden today?
Yeah, so after the event ends today at 5, I'm gonna be in the lobby or outside. We'll determine that and let you know later. And then I'll corral a group of people and take you over to the Grow Garden, and you can see the produce that's growing. Our chart is looking great, so we can admire that and learn a little more.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it off to you to become the interviewer.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you some questions from UDC about your research. And I understand you're working on a research project between UDC and USDA. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So it is a multi-state research project involving about 12 or 13 schools. And my school, UDC, we are responsible for determining the different barriers that people may have to healthful foods and a healthful diet. So our focus population is in wards 5, 7, and 8, since those wards tend to be higher in food desert. And as of late, most of my involvement thus far has been in Ward 7. So yeah, it's going great.
Yeah, so what are the barriers that you've found so far in your research?
Well, primarily the barriers would include more architectural, where there may be a lack of availability of food stores or farmers markets within reach to everyone. It could be political or even cultural or even resourceful when it comes to income. The lower income you have, the less likely you are to purchase healthier foods, which are usually a bit more expensive than the conventional fast foods. Yeah.
So how does the growth of the urban agriculture movement come into kind of debunking some of those barriers that you found?
Well, if we increase the expansion of urban agriculture, that means that more fresh produce, fresh fish, and even the nutrition education would be available to more people in more space. So they will then, instead of just following the healthful trends, these trends could become habits, and they can now have a more healthful diet because they have access to these foods on a more regular basis. If it's affordable, it will be more regular again in their diet, and that would directly impact their nutritional status, since a lot of the preventable diseases are nutrition-based. It's lifestyle is 80% nutrition, 20% fitness. So if we can eat better, we can live better.
Yeah, great, thank you.
You're welcome. And Antonio, you're from Detroit, and Detroit has received some media coverage on the changes lately. What other challenges does that community face?
So Detroit is a city that's been very post-industrial, so we're faced with a lot of lack of job availability. We also live in one of the most segregated metropolitan areas in the entire country, so there's a serious inequity in wealth and distribution of resources in the general area. We're also facing, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it, a lot of water shutoffs and foreclosures. We had like the largest foreclosure crisis in the country's history this past 2 years ago. So there's a lot of like displacement that's happening. And I think one of the big things going forward is finding a way to make the food movement accessible to the residents who have been in Detroit for a long time.
Okay. And how does expanding urban agriculture pose a justice issue in that community?
Yeah, so I think I don't think urban agriculture will necessarily be a panacea, because there's so many policies that expand beyond just agriculture. It's not going to stop get people's water turned on. It's not going to create like all the jobs that we need for such a robust city. But I think it's going to help connect people to nature in a way that is like really important. We live in a city that's like all blocks, rows, very industrial. And people don't have that much access to nature, and there's so many young people who just haven't spent time in trees, getting their hands in the soil, other than lawn. So I think it's going to be a really unique opportunity to connect people with their food system. And I think another really important thing is reclaiming land. Like the 2008 financial crisis was the biggest decrease in wealth for African American people in the entire country's history. And Detroit is the blackest city in the entire country. So it's like really a justice issue. If we can get people connected to the land, get them owning land again, so much of land tenure is tied with wealth in the United States. So I think that's a really important piece, is getting black and brown families back to owning land in the city.
Thank you.
So as students, there's always the issue of how are you going to balance your studies and learning about how to become an adult and all these things. So when it comes to your own personal food choices, I'm sure you make good decisions, but how do you influence your friends on campus or in your lives or on the student farms? And maybe I'll direct my question at you, Antonio, because you can talk a little bit more about the Michigan State Farm.
Yeah, so I actually am not a student, because you can't be a student and work at the Student Organic Farm. It's like a full-time job, and it's an organic certification program. So I think this is really, really important, even for Detroit. I mean, there are 3 of us who are from urban communities in our program who got scholarships to be in the program. And it's that educational component. I'm like 1 or 2 generations removed from farming. My grandfather was a sugarcane worker in Puerto Rico. And the opportunity to jump forward in educational knowledge around farming, managing a farm, crop rotations. There's so much knowledge that I would not have had if I didn't have the opportunity to participate in the Student Organic Farm program up at MSU. So it's been a really unique experience where I can, straight out of this program, start managing my own farm or managing and working at another farm. So I feel like we've been able to leap ahead a lot of knowledge in that short amount of time.
Great.
And I think it's using that knowledge to influence our peers and our neighbors, just being in public space, being in the community, doing this work is what's going to be able to get us to connect with our community about eating better, about making good food choices. I'm lucky to live in a highly immigrant community, so folks are not that unaware of agriculture. Their parents were farming back in Yemen. There's a lot of Yemenis in my community. So the opportunity to re-engage with something that is so recent in their past, I think, is going to be really important.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Tornia, how do you deal with what you eat and what your friends eat, and how does this influence?
Well, I'm also a personal trainer.
Yeah.
So I do this for a living. And sometimes friends, family, even students, they tend to be, some of them would be a little intimidated. They're afraid to eat what they'll usually eat in front of me, like, oh gosh, he's judging me. And that's usually not the case. Initially it was, but then I've grown to overcome that and learned that everyone just needs to take small steps. It's not about just immediately, okay, boom, we have more foods, let's just be healthy tomorrow. It doesn't work that way, it takes time. So that's why with urban farming and even with UDC's urban food hubs, where they provide not just the fresh produce and the fish, but also the nutrition education to go along with that, and food preparation demonstrations to now educate these communities on how to do, what to do with, what to do it with. And now they can take times to adopt new habits to include in their lifestyles. So, but I try in between. I also sit on the SDA, the Student Dietetic Association, which is now SAND, and we encourage small steps. Let's take the stairs today, or something like that. Let's try a salad. There's salads in the cafeteria. So.
Yeah. It's hard when you're a student to not just go for the mac and cheese and to make that healthy choice, go for the sweet green instead. Yeah, ramen noodles, very tempting. So, Kayla, do you want to talk a little bit more about the recent grant you got from the DOEE and the rain barrels and how that fits into what you're doing?
Well, actually, I wanted to talk about our CSA program.
Sure, yeah.
So we partner with Lancaster, which is a farmers cooperative in Pennsylvania, about 95 miles from GW. And we've been partners with them for a few years, working to provide a CSA option for students. So we had a drop-off site. But this summer, we worked to get the CSA program on our dining plan. So now all students, whether you have enough money in your personal bank account or you have money on your student dining plan, have access to a CSA program. And so basically you pay a lump sum of money, and then for a period of time, which is 8 weeks and starts Tuesday, students will receive a box of vegetables. We have eggs, meat, all different sorts of things. Ariel's participating too. So it's exciting, a great way for students to learn how to eat seasonally and understand that maybe you'll get something like celeriac in your CSA, and it's like, well, you got to learn how to use celeriac now, and that's teaching skills, lifelong skills like cooking and composting, because you have all these extra veggie scraps that you have to get rid of. And we've been able to expand that to 91 shares. I think last year we were barely scraping to get 30. So expanding that accessibility for students. And we had a month-long campaign to promote the program. So like you said, getting into public spaces and making people aware of what's available is the most important, because there's so many great resources that people just don't know about. So I've always felt like a lot of what I do is community organizing and PR, and just promoting the heck out of what we do all the time. So I think that that's really the next step for college students, is informing peers in a way that is friendly and safe, and promoting better eating and better cooking and growing and everything.
Great. Yeah, we just have a few minutes left, so I wanted to ask each of you to say, if looking at younger students just starting college, or even students in high school who might be watching today, what's your advice? How do you get into this, and why is it important to be involved in urban agriculture? So we can start here.
Well, since we're students, most of us have goals to graduating with great grades. And the brain needs nutrition too. And if we eat better, again, we can think better, feel better, move better, just be better bodies and individuals. If we succumb to the traditional, conventional fast foods that are traditionally very unhealthy, like the fast Mac you mentioned, it's going to affect how we perform academically, and we don't want anything else that can jeopardize. It's hard enough as it is. So for me, I would take all the help that I can get, if it's a tutor or a salad, and what I would advise to them, it's not as hard as most people put it out to be. It really isn't. We can make these small changes. I pack my lunch for school every single week. I do not buy lunch in the cafeteria. I'll have to forget my food to buy lunch. I would take my Sunday and plan my meals for the whole week. And you can make little changes. It takes time to get there. But with some help and some support, which our SAND also accommodates and try and helps, we share with each other tips on how to be healthy while in school, being active, and just living that well-rounded, healthy, active lifestyle.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah.
Antonio?
It's going to have to be a cultural shift in so many ways. And I think speaking to people's desire to be independent and to live off the land and to connect with the land, I think is a really important way to make that in with people. The opportunity to grow your own food and to potentially have an income based on that is really good. I think Detroit is a city that really knows how to hustle, but thinking about land-based hustles and thinking about ways that we can come together as a community and engage with the soil and the earth, I think is going to be a great way in for people.
Great.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that and just again, it's about the life skills that you acquire through learning to make your own food choices gives you the sense of confidence to be able to go on and, like you said, academically perform well and, have more energy so you can go out and be a more social being. And I just think that being able to cook your own food and know where your food comes from is a really valuable skill that people don't understand a lot of the times. And I think the self-confidence building is a really important aspect of that. And community around food and cooking food and knowing your neighbors and being able to sit down and have a meal and celebrate that is a really big, important part of this too. Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you all. And it was a great discussion. Thanks so much.